Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Radio Dayz, a podcast radio program that delves into the world of terrestrial radio. It's DJs and on-air personality, and you, all fans of radio as a medium. Here's your host, Ron.
Hello and welcome to Radio Dayz the Podcast. You can hear this podcast on Buzzsprout, as well as all the other major podcast platforms. You can also watch this podcast via YouTube and at ronrobinsonstudios.com. In this episode, which is brought to you by Team 71 Mortgage Group and Radio Dayz the Movie, we are going to take a dive into the radio career of a very talented young woman. She's been heard on the air at K105.3 in Jackson, Michigan, Nash FM, WYCD in Detroit, and WKXC in Augusta, Georgia. Did I mention she's graduate? Yes, she graduated from, and then later worked at Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only. It's Jess Poxson. I said your name right?
Yes, I know that one's a tough one.
Yeah, Poxson. It's Poxson. Yeah.
Poison. I've gotten possum before even, so.
So just to clarify, what's the correct pronunciation?
Poxson.
I got it right. All right. That's that Tom Profit. That's that Tom Profit training. I know you had Tom Profit. You got to be.
I did have Tom Profit. Yes.
Thank you for coming on the podcast today. Very excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I love talking about radio, and we both know it's a journey. It definitely is. It's a roller coaster too.
And you have to enjoy the journey. Last week, the podcast was about the difference between small market and large market, and I couldn't think of a better guest because you have worked at both small and market and large market markets. But before we get into your career, Jess, I want to talk about young Jess Poxson. What were you listening to on the radio when you were growing up?
Oh my gosh, I was listening to Mojo in the morning. I was listening to, we want to go way back. Dick Clark was my first inspiration.
When you think of Dick Clark, you think more of TV, but still, he started his career in radio. Most people don't remember that. Yeah.
And that I just remember growing up listening to him. I grew up in Chicago before I moved to Michigan. So yeah, my mom always listened to Dick Clark, and so I did too, and I never really saw myself being on the radio, to be completely honest. I actually wanted to do more on stage. I wanted to do more theater. So,
to that point, when you were younger, before we get to your radio career, did you do some theater when you were young? And if so, what'd you do?
I did a lot of community theater. Oh my gosh, I did shows like The Crucible. I was about the Salem witchcraft trials. I played Abigail Williams.
I can see that. I can see that little witchiness in you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got that Stevie Nicks thing going. It's very witchy woman.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mysterious and kind of crazy. I don't know. So
you said crazy, not me. I just want to put that on the record.
There. I actually did a Shakespeare show as well. So I did a lot of different things, some musicals, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. So I was more going in that direction, and it wasn't until later I tried to go to school, I tried to go to college and find a niche there, and I just never really did. And so I'm very fortunate for Specs Howard and his School of Media Arts, and from there.
So instead of Hollywood, or even New York, you're like, you know what? I'm going to stay home and go to Specs Howard. So that's what happened?
That's honestly what happened. I had kids too, so it wasn't like I could just pick up and go and like pursue this Hollywood career.
Well, and I will tell you this, I'm not going to name drop, but I did some acting myself at one of my first gigs. I played Howie the Milkman of a rendition of Our Town at the Manistee Theater, the same theater where James Earl Jones played Othello when he was in his early 20s.
How cool is that?
But I bring that up, Jess, is because theater is very time consuming. It's not like, I mean, there's a lot of rehearsal. I mean, there's rehearsals where all you do is blocking before you even get to the verbiage. So it's very time consuming. So I'm sure it's not conducive to moving to New York and chasing your Broadway dream.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and you really, at the end of the day, it really wasn't what I really wanted to do.
Sure.
And then I started going to specs. I don't know, something just kind of clicked, and I'm like, I got to do that. I got to try it. I got to give it a try. And I did, and I feel like I really just listened to my instructors there, and the Rest His Soul, Dick Kernan. I remember getting into specs, and he said, you know what, you're not going to make a lot of money, and you're going to have to go to Bad Axe or somewhere, some city in Michigan I probably had never heard of.
You're not starting in Detroit.
Yeah.
That was the message. Yeah.
That was the message. And I thought, what have I gotten myself into? And so I'm like, I can't go and do those. I can't go and work the small markets and I couldn't do that. So I'm like, I got to make it here. I got to make it in Detroit. And like I said, I just listened to what they told me. I started off doing some free things and getting to know people. And from there. Well,
hold on. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. When you went to, what year did you go to Specs Howard?
It was 2010.
Okay.
And I graduated in 2011. It was only an 8-month program at the time.
Now, were you still doing, was it, because when I went as a student, and even when I taught there, before you became a student, it was broken into, like, the first marking period was both radio and television. And so at the halfway mark, you selected whether you wanted to take radio as you know, the radio path, or did you want to go TV? Was that still the curriculum? If not, what was it? How was it different?
No, it was. You had to make a choice. And that was tough for me because I got in there and I'm like, I actually really do well with television, but I didn't, I just got the advice from the instructors and thought, and from the advice that they had given me, radio just seemed to be the route to take, the way to go because of.
Well, you have a big personality. I can see why you were pushed that way, for sure.
Thank you. And so I'm glad they did. I'm glad they were super honest with me. I'm glad I asked the questions. And I'm glad that I took their advice because as cool as it would be to be on television, radio is something special. Once you get in there and you start doing it, you're like, this is where I belong. This is where I want to be. I've tried to go do other things and it always come back. So, yeah. And I do because I want to. Right. It's not because I'm dragged into it or, oh, I guess I'll just take this job in radio. No, it's such an honor to be able to do this. It really is. It's not for everyone. And so I like to be in that little club. And I was told that too. Yeah. I was told that before, that it is a club that you belong to now.
And you know, it's interesting. You say, you know, it was hard for you to select the radio side. It was for me too, because I went there determined. I knew that I wanted to be on talk radio. I knew I was going to go news. That's where I knew my direction because I went there, you know, when I was 30. So I was a little bit older than most of my classmates.
Right.
And what I remember is when we were going through the TV program and when you had teachers like Donnie Hops and others, and the switcher was the job for me that made me think, oh, maybe I want to go TV because when you're the job technical director where it's your job to actually change what's on the screen.
Yeah.
That job almost made me reevaluate my entire thought process because I was like, maybe TV is where I want to be, but.
Yeah. And for me, it was being an anchor. And then I ended up being an anchor on the radio for WJR. So
how cool is that?
It did all work out. It was really cool. It was amazing. Honestly, it's just, again, once in a lifetime opportunity. And that's the thing about radio too, is understanding that every job, because, you know, to go back to talking about small market, large market, every job, every opportunity is really, to me, a blessing.
Right. Right.
And I tried to enjoy everywhere that I've been. So
to enjoy the journey, really, you know, I hate to quote Miley Cyrus, but you know, you got to enjoy the journey.
And it is a journey, and it's not this isn't a path that is one that you can, oh, this is the path that you take, this is exactly how you do it, because it's different for everyone. I mean, my path isn't the same for everyone.
Sure.
There are a lot of similarities. Now, again, having to start in a large market is not easy. It's not easy to try to make a name for yourself. But the only thing that I could say was that helped me in my success was to listen to people who have been there.
You mentioned earlier Dick Kernan, and he got me my very first job at a station called WKLA in Ludington, and he got me my first couple of jobs. Let's move on to what was your first job in radio. Did you get one right out of specs, or talk about your journey, if you would?
So I actually was an intern. I got an internship at Cumulus Media, and so it was several different stations. It was in promotions, and then from there that led into a job in promotions, and then I just kind of worked my way around from there. I was able to land an overnight spot. This was my first on-air job, was at WJR, overnight traffic reporter. And the amazing
cool
Neil, I had to go after, or I don't remember if it was before or after Kevin. No, I was before Kevin. So Kevin comes in, no pressure. I mean, if people don't know who Kevin O'Neill is, he's a legend. He is a legend.
Definitely,
and he's
an
amazing, incredible man to learn from. He could have the biggest ego in this industry if he wanted to, and he doesn't. And he comes in behind me, and I don't even remember my first traffic report, because I was just trying to hurry, rattle it off, and he was like, just slow down next time. I'm like, okay. So I learned a lot from as well. I actually became I was a jock on 96.3 WDVD. I did weekends there. I was.
All right, I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm gonna stop you right there, because we're zooming ahead of some stuff that I want to talk to you about. First off, you started in promotions, and so this is something that I don't really get to talk about that often on this podcast, because people want to hear from what DJs did you work with. But here's the thing. Here's what people need to understand. People that work in promotions, you guys are the ones that are talking to these celebrities. You guys are driving them to the venue. You guys are driving them you guys are spending time with these big name celebrities. So before we get to your on-air career, let's not jump over some of the cool stuff that you got to do working in promotions. I know you tell I know you have a great Tim McGraw story, but talk to me about some of the cool things that you got to do in promotions and radio, working in Detroit.
Oh my gosh. Well, promotions was the learning stop for me. And for me, I didn't really get to meet a lot of people during promotions, because my time was kind of short there before I jumped into everything else. But starting there, I think, was such a good ground for really learning the industry and learning the business. And so maybe I wasn't around a lot of like celebrities, but the on-air personalities to me were celebrities. So I was able to connect with them and it wasn't just, oh, I'm going in the studio. They're coming to, we're doing events, and they're coming to events, and I'm talking to them. And that's how, and they were the ones that are like, you've got a great voice. Let's move you into, the on-air side of things. Have you ever thought about doing commercials? Have you ever thought about being on the air? So those being in promotions, to me, it was special, because to me, the on-air personalities were my celebrities. Now getting into meeting these celebrities and everything, and the things that I've done. I mean, one year I went to like 3 different islands: Jamaica, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. Like, what? This is my life, like totally paid for. I'm on the beach with country artists like Dylan Scott and so many. I honestly, Lauren Elena. I've got great stories about Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. They came back, and they were talking with the personalities, and Tim McGraw's just eating some chips before they go on stage, and they're just normal people. And it's so cool you don't even think about it when you're going through these things, how amazing it is that you have these opportunities to be right there just conversing with these celebrities. Luke Bryan, Blake Shelton. I mean, just to name a few.
Blake Shelton, I was doing a morning show in St. Joe, Benton Harbor at a station called WYTZ. It was the Wild Bill and Ron show, and Blake Shelton came into the studio with us. And this is when Austin was on the radio, so the very beginning of his career.
Yeah.
And he invited both of us to go fishing at his ranch in Oklahoma, and we never took him up on it. And I was like, well, that was just the stupidest thing we never did.
Serious.
But those kind of things happen when you're working at radio stations that you don't really think about, these opportunities that present itself.
They do. And down in Augusta, they have their own show called Guitar Pull. So it was really cool to just see these artists in stripping it down to just playing acoustic guitar for us, playing their hits on just on an acoustic guitar. So and it's like, you don't get this many artists at once on one stage, literally. And so I always try to take in these moments as like, again, just being blessed to have these opportunities to be with people I wouldn't normally be hanging around.
You know, I think I've mentioned this story once before on this podcast, but maybe I haven't. But I remember also when I did the morning show, remember Chris Cagle? Remember Chris Cagle? He came to town and he he was fantastic. I mean, awesome. He had a great catalog there I think he had like a string of hits that went on for 4 or 5 years. Anyway, he came to town. We had him on the air in the morning. After the show, we closed down a local restaurant. I'm sitting at a bar stool sitting next to Chris Cagle, and we're talking about his career, and I'm like, what? Yeah. What is this? What is this?
Exactly. And there's just been times where they'll invite you into their RVs and you're just hanging out with them. They're just like, hey, you want something to drink? I'm like, what?
Dierks Bentley was like that. I've met.
Super cool. Yeah. Super cool guys. And that's what I loved. Oh, and here's another thing about radio. People are always like, oh, do you get to choose or do you pick and choose? And it's like, no, you don't. And I would have never seen myself working on country radio. And that's where I've done the most,
Me too.
Honestly.
Yeah. So, okay, now let's go back to do you remember what your first bit on the air was? Was it in a commercial? Was it a bit on the morning show? Because I'm sure you remember your first time on the air in Detroit.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. I think I talked about Santa Claus being downtown. It was just terrible. I think it was an overnight, and I used a lot of it was just. Thankfully, I was on overnight, and the very first time that I was on was overnight. And I had just finished a shift at WJR. I ran upstairs because they were in the same building. But
so what station are you talking about? It wasn't DRQ.
WJR, and then I went to WDVD.
WDVD 96.3.
Yeah, and so the program director at the time, who was just kind of filling in program director, Jesse Addy, was like, all right, I'm going to because I just asked him, hey, do you need anybody? I'm down here. I'm trying to do my thing, but I would love to make the transition up here. And he's like, you know what? We do need somebody. I think it was like Christmas Eve or something. Overnight, he forgot to put some imaging in though. So I'm like scrambling, trying to put imaging in, trying to do a show. And I'm like, you forgot to put in the imaging. He's like, oh. And
That's
so
awesome.
This is my first time. I'm freaking out. But again, to go back and look at, and he told me before too, before I got on there, just jokingly, he was like, don't suck either. And I'm like,
don't
suck,
no. Yeah, that's good
so you're
advice.
going to suck. Yeah, you're definitely not going to be good. And that was very humbling. Some dead air moments.
Talk about those butterflies you get on when you turn that mic on for the first time. It's like in your head, the whole world's listening.
You really do think that too. And it's like, I mean, there are people that are listening, but I always try to tell people that, nobody's hanging on to your every word. Nobody remembers my first break like I remember it. Like I said, it was, and I don't even remember it very well. It was just that Santa Claus is going to be downtown. Like, it was just so generic. It was like, you're trying to find your personality and yourself, and it's definitely different. And people are like, oh, just be yourself. You have to be yourself, but you also have time constraints that you have to think about, and you have relatability things that you have to think about as well. So definitely want to be yourself, but it's not all about you either. So
at what point did you stop working at JR and start working upstairs, or was it kind of always?
Landed a full-time job. The radio station, well, it was WDRQ, and so it was Doug FM at the time. It had flipped to Nash FM, and I was actually doing their it wasn't a syndicated morning show, it was a live streamed, I guess you could say, morning show. So that was coming through, and I was kind of I was on air in the mornings and kind of did their show and make sure that ran okay. And then I did some DJing at maybe an hour after their show, just to keep it local. And then I ended up getting middays on Nash FM. So that's when I was able to, now I can stop doing everything part-time and focus on something full-time.
Here's another question I have. Did your friends start treating you different because they heard you on the radio?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Like I'm some kind of star, and to me, I'm still me. So I don't know that my best friends started treating me any different, and I just think that there was some starstruck things going on, and then there were some characters that came into the picture too. That now that you're on the radio, you're people's into concerts and getting their songs on the radio, and it's like I only have so much pull with that,
right.
You know. So that was interesting, trying to navigate those things, and I think even our own ego, you know, trying to keep those things in check and just stay humble. And again, these experiences don't always last long. I mean, there's a lot of people that are in the industry who have been where they're at for 20 years and such, but you know, that's like a unicorn.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So go ahead to talk about now you were at WYCD, weren't you there for like 8 years, right?
No, I was there for about 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think it might've been, no, it was longer than 8 months. I'm sorry.
Anyway, where did you go from there? Where did you go from after YCD?
Oh, from WYCD, I actually went and did insurance for a little bit, and I was like, this isn't me. So
you don't look like Jake from State Farm.
I don't, do I? I really didn't fit that. I really did not fit that bill very well. So that didn't last that stint only lasted a very short period of time. So then Specs called me. A friend at Specs was like, hey, we need a career advisor here. So I was like, I've always wanted to go back and give back. And I really felt like that was a really good fit for me. I was able to utilize every area that I had been in radio to help other people become successful as well. And that was so rewarding. It really was. And so I was so grateful for that time.
And who hired you, and who were some of the people that worked there at that time?
So Nancy Shiner actually hired me. Dick Kernan worked there at the time. Specs was there as well. Shannon Bennett was also a career advisor. I
think Renee Vitale worked. Didn't you work with Renee?
I worked with Renee actually at Nash FM.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. So her and I had a blast too, Renee.
She's a hoot.
And that was a good duo right there. Honestly, she was on in the mornings. I was on in the afternoons. So
she's doing great, doing mornings on DRQ right now. I couldn't be more happy for her.
I am so happy for her, honestly, and she truly deserves that. And when we did morning, we always talked about how Detroit needed a morning show. At least at that station, they really needed a live morning show,
right?
Live local morning show. And so I'm just so glad that it's her. They couldn't have picked a better person, honestly.
She's so good. She
is.
All right, so from there you go to Specs Howard. Specs Howard, you know, from someone who taught there for a little bit, taught the audio section, it's a lot different than working at a radio station. How did you find the transition?
It is a lot different. For me, I'm not really this boxed in person of a 9 to 5 kind of gig.
You're a creative. You're a creative. You're not like that's. And that's it. And I know that. I'm very aware of that.
And so that was different. And it was different being on the opposite end and talking to people and trying to help fill their needs. And it was just more of a corporate kind of thing and a 9-to-5 kind of desk job thing. Now, again, it wasn't a typical desk job. And I had so many wonderful colleagues because I had worked with all of these people, really.
Yeah.
Or just knew them. And so I had so many connections to be able to help connect with other people. And I was able to help Specs get connections that they hadn't had before. Just, I don't know why they didn't have the connections,
sure.
But that was really cool. And it's like little old me who started here and was so scared. And so, just didn't know herself. And now I'm in here kind of, helping put the puzzle pieces together for people in their career. So it was really kind of like a full circle moment for me, I think.
And then from there, didn't you leave there to go to Jackson?
No, I left there and went to Georgia.
Okay. When did you go to Jackson? Yep. When were you at Jackson?
I was just recently at Jackson.
Okay. Jackson FM 105.3?
Yep.
All right, we'll come back to that. So after Specs, where did you go from Specs?
Oh, from Specs, I went to Georgia. We're talking about Kix 99 in Augusta.
Yes.
So I went to Georgia, not knowing what I was going to do, really. My brother and sister were like, you can come down here and stay with us. This was after COVID. And I lost my job at Specs due to it. I mean, they were getting ready. It just changed everything. It really did. I mean, so they partnered up with Lawrence Tech. And so, my position was eliminated.
Right. And
so I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing now. So let me go to Georgia. And I actually was a 911 operator for a little while. So.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about that. What was that like? Because I'm sure being a 911 operator, some people are calling and there's some dire situations. How was that? That's a whole different animal. Talk about that.
That was definitely different. And I have to give so much credit to these people that it gave me a real appreciation for people who go out and put their lives on the line every day. And then the people behind the scenes that you don't know who are working with these calls that they never really know what happens. I mean, as a 911 operator, you don't know what happens after you hang up the phone. You almost have to cut yourself off and go, I can't worry about that because we're on to the next one. But it was definitely different and utilizing so many different life skills. I mean, being a mother, talking people down, being excitable, even with what I did in radio, trying to keep people's spirits up. It's definitely eye-opening. I'll say that. It was eye-opening.
So while you're there, you're obviously trying to get a job in radio. So you ended up getting one? Talk about how that happened.
I did. I really wasn't trying, though. I had a friend of mine reach out and he was like, hey, we're looking for a third chair here. And I know you're in Georgia. So what do you think? Would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, I would. And I'm so glad that I took that opportunity because that was the absolute best time that I've had on the air and in radio. And while I was there, the station won a CMA award. I mean, come on. We had, Gabby Barrett call in and tell us we won a CMA award. Like there's things that, my co-host and I, we were just such a good pair too.
So that was a morning show, right? You were doing one half of a morning show. Talk a little bit about what you guys were doing on the air. What was your stick? What were your bits? What kind of morning show was it?
A lot of it was just really keeping it real about our lives and what we go through as, what I go through as a mom, what he goes through as, a married man, and they had a baby while I was there. So being able to be there for that process with them or that experience with them was so cool. And so we just really I felt that we really brought people into our lives to help them understand that we're just like them. So a lot of it was just talking about things that are going on in the world. We did a Can't Beat Jess segment where people would call in and we would go back and forth with random facts, and whoever won, then they won pretty big money. Because I was pretty good at that. I was pretty good at that.
That's awesome.
Not a lot of random knowledge going on up here. So, yeah. So I was able to work with some phenomenal people in that building, and I'm so grateful for that experience. But honestly, there's no place like home. I hate to quote Dorothy here, but seriously, it was just time to come back home, and we'll see what happens. It's always an adventure. There's never a dull moment. And just when you think it's over for somebody, they pop back up.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing about radio is you never know when and where your next opportunity is going to come from. And that's why I'm curious, because before we jump off, before you came home, specifically about your morning show, you've done a couple morning shows now. You got 2 or 3 under your belt now. From your purview, how has radio changed in the last decade as far as doing a morning show, or has it?
It has absolutely changed in the last decade. A lot of movement towards the digital realm. And I think that a lot of people are doing a good job of that, as long as we stay open-minded, that we have to keep moving forward. It's not going to ever be like it was 10 years ago. It's fine to go back and look at that and say, okay, that's how it was. But now it's shifted so much. I know there's been talk about AI robots doing jock shifts, and that's fine for certain aspects, but there's nothing like having somebody live and local in your studio. And I hope that doesn't go away. I hope we don't get so far into the digital world that we forget that people still want somebody who knows and lives in the city that they work in and can be relatable to them on so many different levels. So again, the way that it's changed in my eyes is that it has changed more toward going to the digital world and doing more than just being on air. I mean, we're not just on air personalities anymore. We really are content creators. And so it's being more on social media. It's staying on top of what's going on. And you know what? Honestly, it's listening to younger people. I've noticed that the more that I listen to younger people and what they want and how they listen to radio, morning shows, whatever it is on the radio, the more that I can be realistic about where we are. And not saying that we just throw away everything we've done and totally try to, reinvent the wheel here. But I just always want to be moving forward and moving along and staying, just staying relevant, really.
Well, I mean, with that in mind, I got to ask you this question. This is something I want to double back and ask you, because we were talking about you doing several morning shows. What was that last morning show? You're doing more social media, but from a standpoint of enjoying your job, did you enjoy that more, or what you were doing with the Jenny and Jess program more, and why?
Well, I enjoy definitely being on a morning show with people and having those conversations rather than just, I mean, I enjoy writing as well. I think that's a part of it, but to have that magic with another person, and even if you do a solo morning show, having that time with people before they go to their job, before they go to school or whatever, is so precious to me. Seriously, to start a day with somebody, hopefully, get their mind off of things, keep them in a good mood, get them in a good mood. I don't know, I might make somebody not in a good mood, but hey, I'm there and you're there, and I appreciate that. So somebody asked me what I thought my future looked like in radio, and I do hope that it's, I've been waking up with Jess for however many years I'm allowed to do this. I've been waking up with her for that many years. What an honor that is to start someone's day. Somebody wants to wake up and turn on your voice and start their day with you. That's incredible, because we can get so much stuff from the internet. There's so much out there, but that's intimate to me.
Yeah. Well, it's a great segue into one of my wrap-up questions. What, in your opinion, what is the current state of terrestrial radio?
Again, if you're not, you're going to get left behind if you're not in the times. And we can't and this has been from 10 years ago, even people going, well, it's not like it was. It's not like it was. It's not. So either we're going to move forward or we're just going to stay back here with, quote, what it was. And then what are you doing? Nothing. You're not staying with it. So my advice is that we just keep on not changing, but just reconfiguring things, and I think that that's important in life anyway.
I think at the end, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I think it's just entertaining someone for a period of time, because we can get music anywhere. There's only one place we can get local personalities, and that's on the radio.
And that's it. And that's what I've been striving to do since I became a morning show co-host, is just keep that in mind, that these are people just like me. And this is going to be different because there's something that I'm going to bring to the table that you're not going to find on just the internet scrolling through, because it's not me.
Right.
So
I know you're on the beach right now, but what's next for Jess? For Jess, I want to call you Jess Poxson. What's next for Jess Poxson?
I've got some things in the works. I've always got that hustler mentality. I've got some things in the works. It's not anything I can talk about just yet, but you're not going to see the last of me. That's for sure. You will be seeing me again soon with a mic in my hand and ready to take on the airwaves. And that's what you're going to see for a long time, hopefully, to come.
That if I could afford the royalties, I would, underneath that, I would have every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling.
That's what I want.
That's what I'm talking. Like. Anything you want to add, Jess?
For anybody that is trying to make it in this industry or has been out of the industry for a little while, thinking about getting into the industry, doesn't want anything to do with the industry, just know that your time is valued by somebody out there. Somebody valued you, listening to you. And, that time is so special. And for the people that just listen to radio, we appreciate you so much for helping us continue to do what we love and to keep fitting in. There's really not a whole lot out there for this particular niche. And I just appreciate people that keep on listening so much. So thank you.
Jess, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your broadcast story. Very cool story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate it.
Stay with me, okay?
Okay.
Thanks again to Jess Poxson, and thank you for checking out Radio Dayz the Podcast. Today's show was brought to you by Team 71 Mortgage Group. You're looking to buy or refinance a home and have questions that need answers now? Call Brian Allure, 810-444-6466. Today's show is produced by Ron Robinson Studios. If you need professional marketing videos, photography, headshots, maybe you need drone video, head over to ronrobinsonstudios.com. You can also hear previous episodes of Radio Dayz the Podcast there as well. Also, if you'd like to learn more about the upcoming documentary about the history of radio, Radio Dayz, 101 Years of Radio, click on the Radio Dayz the Movie icon under the Documentaries tab at ronrobinsonstudios.com. Thanks again for checking out the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.
You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!